Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition episode of This Week in IP&O, where we live from on the couch in my living room. It's the year recap episode. As the year comes to a close, this is going to be the last one before the holiday break. So we're just going to do this episode to kind of recap about the podcast, about the year, and everything that's happened. So I guess to start, John and Rich. John, you can answer first. I think we should discuss the beginnings of the podcast about like what we were trying to accomplish by starting the podcast, and how do you feel like we've been effective, or how do you think that's transformed over time into what we're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, sort of looking back, right, when this all started, we didn't really expect, or we didn't really know what to expect, like how long we would be out, right? And here we are in December, still out. And I remember when we were first sort of having these discussions about what we can do to help keep others in our group connected. It was sort of like us guiding conversations about what some groups are doing and how that affects others, right? And it feels like, to me, like eventually it turned into this thing where like every week we were being educated on something just as much as everybody else was, right? Like in the beginning we sort of had this idea, like we know what everyone is doing, sort of, but we want everyone else to know what everyone else is doing. And it sort of branched out to be this thing that became like, we don't really know what these people do, but we're just as interested to know how it affects the rest of the community as anyone else might be. So it definitely took on a different shape as time went on, I think, and continued to be like more and more informative about other areas of the university.
I think at first, like John said, we didn't really know how long this was going to last. So I think our first intention was to sort of let everybody know that we're still sort of, at work for the university. We're still trying to find ways of, doing our part as communicators to let people know what's going on, to be kind of like a, I guess sort of like a news conduit for IP&O specific things. And I think there was, as time grew on, we realized that there was this sense of we were missing, that sense of being together. And I think that the podcast kind of gave us that back. We had a sort of they could see our faces and they kind of felt like they were at work. So I think that was really cool that we were able to, to do that for people. And then it kind of turned into, we were getting these great guests, like John said, where we had these people who they, from IP&O or even from outside IP&O that really just kind of had some project that IP&O touched. And we kind of laid out, really, I think we did a good job of laying out where IP&O's footprint sort of touches on the university and how it really kind of touches every aspect of it. So I think it's been great. I think we've made the best of a really unusual, unusual year, to say the least. So yeah, it's been great. I think it's been worthwhile.
It's funny that, John, when you said that when we first started it, we didn't really know how long we'd be doing it for. I remember us starting it, and then when we did our first episode with Tony, him joking about how like it took us so long to get to him, to like ask him to be on it. And I remember thinking in that moment, like, yeah, like this might be like one of the last podcasts we do, because like in my head I thought there was a good chance we would be going back by then. And then
Right.
it's like however many episodes later, and we're still doing it. But I think that even when we do get back to to normal or whatever, and everyone's back in the office, I feel like it's still gonna continue the podcast in some shape or form. But like at that time, I think where our thoughts were that like we were doing some sort of short term
Right.
uh thing that only like had like a little bit of a shelf life. But then as we were talking to all these new people, like we realized that one, it's not that it wasn't just IP&O people, it was people that have like worked with IP&O, and there was just this whole laundry list of potential people to talk to. And a lot of those uh to me were some of the most like interesting ones, where even just last week when we talked to Nancy Riley about the vaccine trial trailers, that was something I didn't really even know that much about, but that was a project that IP&O had helped facilitate. And like learning about those kind of things from those people, to me, have been one of my favorite parts of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you would have told me that we would have like somebody like that who's involved in the pandemic response, like as a guest, at first it would have been like, wow, like that's way beyond the reach that we ever thought that we would have. Like, again, in the beginning, it was kind of like, we're going to talk to the people that, kind of we've worked with, right? The people that we know, maybe not personally, but at least that we know what their relationship is to these projects. And then all of a sudden we started, I don't know, through if it was word of mouth or you know, from kind of realizing that our objectives had grown and that our reach had grown a little bit. And we started getting these, like the, you know, like Chris Menente, who's developing the Center for Autism. He was, obviously somebody that we weren't aware of when we first started this, and he wasn't aware of us. But then here we are, several months into this, and he's talking about a project that most people didn't even know was going on, and maybe wouldn't know if inside of IP&O at least, unless that tie was sort of made clear to them.
Right. Right. I mean, even if you consider, right, so we started this, what was it, March or April, right? And if you would have told me in March or April that we would have Tony on as the first repeat guest, and we would be on campus talking about, how we're preparing to be back on campus safely, what, the end of September, beginning of October that was, like, yeah, I remember, in typical fashion, the three of us, the first week of March, betting on how long we might be out for. And, I think like the highest range was like 3 weeks. And then here we are 6-7 months later, still trying to figure out, where we're going, what we're doing, how we're doing it. And again, you get all of these really awesome guests that have a lot of great reach outside of our group, which is really cool to see. But yeah, then you get Tony back and it's like, we're still here, we're coming back, and we're coming back stronger, and this is how we're coming back. It's just like, it feels like the first time we interviewed Tony was a combination of 2 weeks ago and 3 years ago all at once.
The interesting thing about like the length of time of this podcast is that it's kind of like a time capsule of what the world was like for like
Right.
working people during that time. Not even just Rutgers, because if you go back and listen to our first episode, it's just us three. And I think Tony even brings it up. He's like, in the first episode, you guys were talking about how when you bring in groceries, you're scrubbing them
Right.
down and you're doing this and this and that. And then kind of, I feel like there's a progression throughout the episodes where you hear people have that same mindset as us. And then as we go and are talking to more people are getting looser and looser, and like they're feeling more comfortable. And it's kind of just like a microcosm of what people felt like at work in general. And you could kind of see that go from March until now.
Right.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like as this thing has progressed, like our sort of goals with this have changed. Now we've kind of shifted into making people feel comfortable with the inevitable return whenever that happens. And just informing them of what's going on and how they can sort of feel better about going in, like what we've done to sort of facilitate them going back and how they should feel good about going back. So yeah, there's been this whole arc from washing groceries and scrubbing everything to and it grew with our like society's understanding of the virus, like exactly how is this thing transmitted, like is it I think people are much calmer now because we really know, like, it's about that indoor close contact, and if we're able to sort of mitigate that by doing things outdoors, that really it is possible to kind of avoid this thing or avoid serious infection. So
Right. And I think like another interesting point, right, is that simultaneously while we are learning about the virus and how to live with it, you could sort of get a sense from each new guest that they've become more acclimated to working from home, right? It's like in the beginning, this was like so brand new to everybody, even us to a point. And a lot of people weren't really sure how that was going to work for them, and there was a lot of adaptability required, and we saw it firsthand that people just did what they had to do to figure out how to get their job done from home, and everyone did it. And then you wind up with this amazing vaccine clinical trial, and people continue to do really important work in a completely different environment. But you saw that progression sort of as we were learning about how to live outside of work. We're also learning how to work in this new sort of environment, which was pretty interesting to see the correlation between the two.
Isn't that funny to think about that? Our first episode topic was like setting up a workstation at home, or like getting used to a routine working at home, where now it feels like that, like going through that kind of stuff seems so long ago, and it feels like now at this point, like everyone is like an expert on that, to the point where it's interesting that however many months ago that was, 7 months ago, that wasn't a thing that people were used to, and that was something that people would actually find useful, hearing what other people were doing. Whereas now it's like I feel like everyone's got like their stations, everyone's got their routines all set up.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to relearn my routine for when we go back. It's been so long since I've done like my go to work routine that it's gonna be like a shock all over again.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. Driving now, I don't drive
Driving
nearly as much as I used to.
No, me either.
When I get in the car
I
now,
don't
I'm
miss
like
the train.
checking my mirrors.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think that's a good yearly wrap up, a good state of the podcast. We're going to come back from the new year. We already have a few guests lined up that I think are also going to be very interesting. We're going to do a few shout outs to end us off, to all the guests, to Frank Rita, Javier Cortez, Alex Ruiz, Dr. Francine Conway, Nairi Agbara, Tony Calcado, David Van Dyke, Ghislaine Darden, Joe Holtzclaw, Seth Richter, Tara Gorfie, Dr. Lou Galliano, Will Constantine, Barbara Bender, Ellen Leibowitz, Chris Menente, Leanne Kimber, and Nancy Riley. Thank you for coming on. Thank you everyone for listening. Have a happy holiday, happy new year, and we will be back in the new year better than ever.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Thank you, everybody.